Okay, so I'm starting today's stream early because I'm a rebel. I'm a troublemaker. Hey, just because. So, all right. I hope everybody's having a good day. And I know I'm a half an hour earlier than I normally am. I'm not gonna stop earlier. I just wanted to get going. So people will join in, or they won't. It's just having fun. So I got a couple things I want to show people today. I'm having a lot of fun with a lot of these pages that I put together, and I've had a pretty productive morning. Helping a friend put together his book, and it's a great book. I'm enjoying it, and at the same time, I got all these materials that I've assembled this week that are just flying together. They really are, and I'm having a good time with it. So, hey, Chris, welcome aboard. So, it's just one of those things where you just get right into the mode. But I got some really fun stuff that I wanted to show today. Hello, Marguerite. How are you? One of the things about sequential media, sequential art, comic books per se, when people hear the word comic books, they sort of immediately put it in a basket. And they either think it's for children, or they think it's superhero business, or they think it's manga. And there's an awful lot more material that's out there, and I wanted to show people some of it because I'm a big fan of the other stuff. And I like the others the previous things that I've listed, yes. But I'm a big fan of the other stuff. And so I thought I'd walk you through today and show you a few of those things. Sorry, it was bugging me. Okay, so I'm going to switch cameras, but before I get into that, this is today's page. This is from the suggestion, one of the suggestions of ideas that were being proposed during the stream yesterday. But the page itself is, when I was assembling these pages, and I've got 14 of them prepped on Monday. But when I was assembling those together, I would just write down a notion on the back. And for whatever reason, because of the pink lady that's in the bottom left corner, and why I stuck the hand clenching a sponge or a heart or whatever it is, I suggest that it's a heart. But I wrote on the back of this page, passion. So I had to fashion today's story around passion and the idea of we might have a passion for something, but it's still going to take a body of work in order to actualize said thing. So that is what today's page is about. There we go, a little bit bigger. I'm sorry I had it so small. So with things like that in mind, I've already got 4 pages done from this process, this setup this week. And I'll switch cameras really quick for a second so you can see it really didn't change too much from the original. So, it's I really enjoy the light applications of value over top of, a simple pen, scribbled pen drawing. And then you just add these little applications over that and give it a little bit of dimension, give it a little bit of volume. And good fun in the sun as far as I'm concerned. So I like doing that process. It's a very different application than the last page I did, which has such opacity to it. And then a page before that, another direction turn again, and a page before that, so it's all about just, trying different things. Well, speaking of trying different things, I have some fun things to show you. Now, as I was saying at the beginning, there is so much more to comics, to sequential media, than just your typical superhero fare. And yet, at that, I talked about Dave McKeon's Cages book the other day. As I said then, and I'll say it 50,000 times, I'm a massive Dave McKeon fan. I absolutely love his art. And the first time that I was exposed to Dave McKeon's art was with this book here. Now, this is a Batman comic. But the difference being with this Batman comic is that this book is entirely painted and mixed media made by Dave McKeon. And so I'm going to pop in on this one I'm going to just get a little bit closer here. There we go. Okay, so you can see how he's using different applications. This is actually etched into a piece of wood and filled in with material. There's priming and stuff over top, graphite over top of that, scribbling over there to look like some sort of old psychiatric notes. You know, you've just got all of these different applications to surface. And that's the start of a Batman storybook. So this is not your typical fare. And so much like his cages and his Violent Cases is another book that I've shown that he's illustrated. Here he is applying a whole bunch of different methods to storytelling. And so we start off with the exampling of someone's descent into madness and how she's institutionalized. Their house, the Arkham house, the Arkham family, they turn their house into a sanatorium because Mrs. Arkham, you know, succumbs to her mental illness. And then it becomes the mental sanitarium for this city of Gotham. So this is where you see your Batman come in. And so here's a graphite sketch with, am I on the zoom? I'll put the zoom up. I don't know why I'm trying to lift it up. This is a Batman sketch in graphite with white paint pushed throughout. As you can see, there's Commissioner Gordon. But it's just a very different aesthetic, a very different look. Batman as a block of darkness, a shape value, in order to denote the character and the impact he has, his presence, his looming presence as he moves towards the psychiatric hospital. And so it's rather interesting, all the different approaches that McKeon takes. I'll pull out again on this one. Look at the clockworks. Those are drawn. But the different approach that he has in the storytelling to this story about Batman having to go into this psychiatric hospital and to save all the staff because it's become overrun by all of the monsters that are in his repertoire. This is the scariest version of the Joker you're ever going to see. So I'm going to warn you now, I'm going to zoom in on it, okay? Don't I look just good enough to eat, he says. And so that's a painting. So this is a very different style of telling a Batman story. And the whole thing just keeps going and going and going and going. And there's actual cloth and lace and textures and cutting into the surface of the image and so many different applications to it. And it's a truly scary, I mean, look at the back cover alone. There's a piece of lace involved in the composition for the cover. You know, but if you're ever going to read a Batman story, this might be the one. Little Vincent Pricey, huh? Anyways, so it's an absolute treasure of mixed media approaches to storytelling. So I highly recommend it. Hiya, Gary. Welcome aboard. So this is the first book I'm going to show today. And in my exampling of comics becoming something more. And in the sense that it doesn't just have to tell superhero stories or manga stories or children's stories. We can tell so much more sophisticated stuff. Speaking of which, Gary Hodges, who stopped in here, is doing a fantastic book called DVSM. And Gary, amongst a number of other cool creators in the area, are going to be at the Arizona Comic Show. I'm not sure what the name is, Gary. If you're here, just type it in. But you can, if you're in the Arizona area, go and check it out. You know, get to meet some of these really cool independent creators. So, all right. If I was in the area, if it was more than a 2-day drive, I'd go myself. But, so this is Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious earth, is the subtitle to that. Grant Morrison wrote this, bit of a nut, but beautiful book. I'll pull back out again so you can see the whole cover. This is one printing of many. I've got a couple of different versions of this because they added material into one of them, back matter and interview. So ISBN number 093-0289-56-0. Okay, so that's our first book I'm going to show. Coming up next. Now this is where we're going to take a departure away from traditional fare. this is Fables. Now, I've just picked one particular issue of Fables, Fables number 100. And it's a sort of wrapping up of the entirety of a series. But what Fables is all of the nursery rhyme characters and fable characters, Little Jack Horner, the Three Pigs, all of these characters exist. They exist in our world. Bluebeard is in our world. And they're also in little side realities. But all those side realities, some mysterious, unseen bad thing has been, making havoc through all of these other little worlds of story, so that they're all running to the real world. And many of them live in this large apartment building downtown New York. And so because of that, you have a mayor of Fableton, and it's all in a high rise, and all these characters, and then there's the fables that can't fit into human society because they look either like monsters, or they're anthropomorphic, like animated talking English speaking pigs, so they live on the farm, which is just outside the city. The principal character in this is Snow White. Her sister is Rose Red from the nursery rhyme, and she is married. Snow White is married to the big bad wolf, Bigsby the Wolf, who is a private detective in this world. He's the policeman in this world. And so it's beautifully illustrated by Mark Buckingham. And it incorporates, there's the three blind mice. And, he's got you there, Thaddeus. You can't argue with science. Just some of the personalities of these characters are so fantastic. And there's a bad guy being turned to gold. There's so many great things in here. And in the course of all of these stories, when Bixby the Wolf, or the Big Bad Wolf, and Snow White have children, she has 6 children, and half of which are because they're grandchildren of the North Wind. So it's all these different fables and characters brought in together. And there's Rose Red. There's Cinderella. She's a troublemaker. Destroy all our houses and huts and dens and nests. Just the fact that the animal characters talk. There's Geppetto. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving off frame. There's Geppetto right there. So all of these different characters from all of these different stories are brought together under one wonderful, large scope storyline. And there's Little Boy Blue. Talks about Pinocchio's gift. There's Geppetto himself. But it has interesting little fun things, like here's a theater that you can take these pages and copy them and print them out and build for yourself. Here's all these characters you can make paper cutouts of and make a theater, a stage for yourself to enact the different characters interacting. So either way, this is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful story. And there's a little backup feature here as well. There's the Frog Prince. He always wears a frog cap. But, there's Thumbelina. It's little Tom Thumb, right? So many great characters. Anyhow, absolutely fantastic stuff. It's called Fables. Now, there are 11 trade paperbacks, 11 of these little collected editions like this. There's a rather large pile of issues. There's larger bound collected editions of this series. If you look it up, Bill Willingham, Billwillingham, is the writer of all of this. Mark Buckingham is the artist of all of this. And then there's James Jean, who I've talked about on a stream before here, is the painter of all these covers. This is a Charles Vess cover because it's a special issue, special edition. But just phenomenal material, folks, and I highly recommend that. If you're interested, please check out Fables, Fables. There's a number of spin-off series as well, but the principal one is called Fables. So I'm not going to bother giving you the ISBN for that because there's a number of different volumes that you can look up. But Bill Willingham, Fables. Okay? Now, so that's incorporating fairy tales into sequential media. and incorporating all these fairy tale characters, making larger narratives that cross them over one with the next. You know, Cinderella drives a motorcycle in that, and has a semi-automatic rifle. Like, she fights against the monsters. It's such a wealth of taking things that people might not pay enough attention to anymore and making something of them. So now here is something else that's absolutely phenomenal. This is P. Craig Russell. He's one of the artists that I mentioned yesterday, when I was talking about Jeffrey Jones. P. Craig Russell has adapted the magic flute, which is one of these Norse myths that were incorporated by Wagner and into these wonderful, fantastic, big operatic performances. But this is an adaptation of Tamino, I think it is. Oh no, Tamino's the character. Well, it's just anyways, I can't remember who the original source is, but this is a beautiful retelling of the opera. And I'll pull in on this, and you can see a very different approach to storytelling, very different kind of line, really elegant, and it has a sort of pre-Raphaelite feel to the characters and the way that he illustrates, and the angelic creatures. They all have that sort of, even the masculine characters have this lovely feminine quality, and all the angels have this sort of bird-like quality. There's the dragon, there's the hydra. So it's all this symbology in the dream, and then we step right into the operatic orchestral piece. So it's, and all these characters on this big mad quest, in this case for the magic flute. He also did an adaptation of The Ring of the Nibelung, which is another Wagner opera, and he did a number of these books, but these are lovely and elegant, and the art for them is just pretty, and it's a really, really soft line application to here. He uses the darks sparingly, but when he uses them, they have purpose, and just wonderful work. P. Craig Russell. Now, these editions are fairly old. There's collected versions of these as well, but P. Craig Russell's The Magic Flute, and you can also look up The Ring of the Nibelung. Now, I have another adaptation of The Ring of the Nibelung opera, and that is by, I'm trying to think of what his name is. I think it's Axel Elise that I have, and it's Axel Elise. I have the Siegfried, and I've shown this work before. It uses the other name that the opera is wildly known by, and that is the Twilight of the Gods. And so this is a similar content, with a completely different artistic approach. And this is made to look far more like an animation, like an animated film. And there's Odin against the one tree, I'll move in on that. Look at that dramatic use of color, and to separate forms. See the people in the clouds. There's so many different little pieces of information. But there again is the big Norse gods and all the monsters of the unknown. So it's a wonderful series. It's absolutely beautiful. Marguerite's getting booped out. Sorry, Marguerite. But it's just, again, the telling of an epic story with absolutely beautiful visual approach. And so these are, this is 978-160-886-420-1. So that's a couple of different versions of of the same operas being adapted. Oh, Marguerite's back. Oh, that's good. So now here's something else that's fun. This is an adaptation of a piece of literature by Herman Melville. And most people know in the Western world, you have an idea of the story Moby Dick. And it's one of those trivia questions. What book starts with "Call me Ishmael" as its first line? Now you know, Moby Dick. So this is Bill Sienkiewicz, and I've shown his work before. It's a tricky one to spell: Sienkiewicz. Now, his father anglicized it to Sankiewicz. It's actually, if you're, Middle European, you realize it's Sienkiewicz, but he anglicized it so that he could separate himself from any. He tried to diminish any of that sort of cultural racism that was going on when he came over to America. So, this is Bill Sienkiewicz's version of adapting the book Moby Dick. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Here is, it's definitely Polish, but here is his, see, there's your first line, "Called me Ishmael." And the artwork for this, and I'm going to pull the camera in once more, in and out, in and out, in and out. So this is a really, Sienkiewicz has a really fantastic grasp of value. Look at this. It looks like a classical painting, but it's just a single panel about guys in these taverns and these boating taverns. But there's just this sort of epic quality to the artwork here. He's really trying to tap into, this epic piece of literature and to symbolically interpret the story elements as best as he can in a really interesting way. There's a lot of red outline on characters, which is a really interesting way to approach differentiating a character from this environment. But it's some great stuff. I'll pull out in this one because it's a big impact image. But there is Ahab as he's presented. Kind of has a Gregory Peck vibe to him. And then here's the explanation of the whale as this monstrous beast. But just the beautiful approach to storytelling, so interesting. And he does things like he applies white line overlays to separate his panels. He puts these down with a thin piece of sticky paper. Very thin application, really skinny tape. And it's a neat way to break up panel shapes, and he's loose with it. He's really loose with it. All this text goes on over top the same way as I do it digitally with Photoshop. But the artwork there's a real subdued approach to it, and I love that. But then you can see, look at this. Oh, the craziness of Ahab, and the teeth, and the nightmare dreams, and this is where they have the two whales attached to either side of the boat, and they're dragging it back to Long Island, or to New England, I'm sorry. And all the things that go wrong there. And then there's a sort of telling of George versus the dragon, like it's in the book, and he does it in a very different style, a very cartoony approach to it, or classic, almost like a tapestry type thing. But that recurring paper with the crocodile teeth is throughout. It's stuff that describes the different whales, beautiful watercolor illustrations. It's just one of those things where you see somebody's interpretation of something and it just stands out in such a different way. Classics Illustrated is a storyline, or a book line, and they produced about 170 different classical pieces of literature in sequential form. And then years later, so that's in the 1950s, okay? And then years later, in the 1980s, they started doing more modern reinterpretations of them, because the visual sentiment has changed a little bit in comics from the 1950s to the 1980s, and there's a more sophistication being developed in storytelling techniques, and in using watercolors and using block prints and things like that, and using all the mixed media madness of Bill Sienkiewicz. But it's come out again since. I have a lovely, and I've shown this, I think. I have this is another pushing of classic literature. This is Homer's the Odyssey, illustrated by Greg Tocchini, and a little more cartoony vibe to it because it came through Marvel, but people keep adapting the I'm back, YouTube is acting weird. There's nothing I can do about YouTube. I have nothing else turned on. It's just me. It's just the signal thing. It's being weird for PNM the other day too. So I'm just going to keep going, folks. I'm sorry if it pops you in and out, but my apologies. There's a number of different iterations of Classics Illustrated, but the base thing of the matter is that you can find so many adapted pieces that are so beautifully done. Just on the back alone, there's Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven and Other Poems, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Great Expectations, Through the Looking Glass, The Scarlet Letter, Hamlet, Count of Monte Cristo, Island of Dr. Moreau, Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Call of the Wild by Jack London, for goodness sakes. So this is one of the most beautiful books, I think. The ISBN for this sucker is 0425-12023-6. This cost 475 pennies when it came out. And that was expensive at the time it came out, and it was worth every penny when I picked it up as a younger guy. Okay, so one more thing to show you, and it's 3 volumes. Now, Fritz Lang, the guy that did Metropolis, phenomenal filmmaker. But Metropolis isn't my favorite Fritz Lang film. M is. Simply the letter M. And what it's about is awkward. Now, hopefully, this isn't going to cause further problems with the U of Tubes. We love you, YouTube. Please work right. This is John J. Muth, who I've talked about, his illustration, his adaptation of Fritz Lang's film M, which is about a predator who is doing terrible things and making young people disappear in this German town. And so he has to be stopped. Now, this entire book is illustrated using soft graphite, charcoal, Conte. This entire book is this soft palette, beautifully rendered book of images that tell the story, and it uses the silent moments like Fritz's film does. It's a beautiful, pure adaptation of it. Just image after image of wonderfully executed pieces. And it captures the 1930s. Now I'll switch back out again so you can see this whole page. It captures the 1930s black and white, hard noir. Add some sepia tone, add some values as things will get colorized over time, right? Different iterations of it over the years. But it captures that soft. It's not that it's like a soft focus. It's not that it's unfocused. It's just that the contrast, the light value is so extreme that it's overtaking. The dark areas can be very dark. The light areas can completely wash things out. It's filmed outside. It's not filmed in a studio, as most films around that time were located within a controlled lighting context. This is out in the streets of Germany. So these are absolutely wonderful. And in the center of the first one, Elsie's Death by the Amaranth Quartet and the writer-artist John J. Muth. So there's a little 45 in here to play. I've never taken mine out because I love it so much. But look at the beauty of the work. And in the Hall of the Mountain King by the Moon Gods and Steve Niles. Steve Niles is a writer and musician, but he's primarily a writer for sequential books. But look at this woman at the boarding house, Elsie, wondering where her daughter is, And the use of red is incredibly powerfully symbolic in the film, because in the colorized version, right? Because of course we couldn't see red, but it's a very clearly and distinct different value. There you are. There's the letter. There's the pencil. There's a few clues that we know about this person, and that is the balloons and the pencils. But I don't know if you know the story of M. Look at this beautiful crowd shot. And I'm gonna pull in on this because it's just something else. Look, it's all soft values. It's very soft applications here in order to get this whole crowd scene in and give depth to it and have this character feel so far back in the room as he puts his hand up and gets focus on him. The contrast of the light of the crowd washed out with the background washed out. We have the dark space in the foreground, which connects close to us. We see this man looking back at us, the only person who's doing so, and the person who is looking for the killer raising his arm at the back. So the symbology of that is just so wonderfully captured, and that's Fritz Lang did it in the film, and of course John Jay's done it here, but just these beautiful images. Look at this again. Everybody's washed out because it wants you to focus on the umbrella and the apples. So these are incredible, and just how you have to really restrain yourself to do a drawing in soft graphite or pastels or whatever he's using here, and not enhance the dark values and not really push the contrast. It's interesting, but it's got its power in that. But it's a really challenging thing to hold back on that. I would say, anyways. But what he's doing is he's capturing what's in the film, and then of course here comes the head of the underworld, who's going to organize the underworld to get involved and stop this guy. But just the visuals that are parts of the visuals that are in the films on the 3 covers. I mean, there's the balloons, there's one of the unfortunate young people, here's the knives, here's the man on the run. And there's a beautiful moment, and this is the one thing I'm going to show that is one of the most beautiful and interesting moments in film. So the street people are looking for the bad guy too, because the police aren't getting it done. And so the man who sells the balloons, who they suspected for a while until they realize he's blind, he hears somebody whistling the tune, and he's pretty sure he heard that tune whistled when one of the kids disappeared. So he calls over a young street thug, and he says, "That's him. Get after him. Mark him." And so the young man puts an M in his hand, and on the palm of his hand, he puts it in chalk. He sees the guy coming, right? Looking in the window of all the knives, cutting an apple, peeling an apple with his knife in his pocket. This is our bad guy. The young man bumps into him, touches him on the shoulder, and here it comes. And he marks him. So, now, everybody is following him. Everybody knows who they're looking for because he has the mark. And until he realizes that he does, he has no idea all the people that are converging on him. And then the third part of the book is the great chase. It's just phenomenal series. There's three different books. But if you look up M, I would just suggest, because there's different versions that you can get of this. You can get it in the single volumes like this, or you can get it in, I think that there's a collected volume of the 3 books together. I'm not sure. M, John J. M-U-T-H. John J. Muth. Otherwise, I'll just hold these up so you can screen cap them. There you go. Okay. So this is an adaptation of a film, and it's done in a beautiful, soft application style. Look at some of these images, for heaven's sakes. Like, just the application of time and skill in order to emulate this fine, contrasting, cutaway work. Soft mark making tools. So what I'm just trying to get across is how many different ways we can tell story sequentially, and we can tell different types of story than the expected traditional approach. So I have lots of books like this that I'd love to show you, and I'll bring a couple out each time, I guess. But this is the stuff that I tend to lean towards, is those kinds of books that have a degree of artistry that just sort of steps out of the traditional line art, and then there's pieces that do have traditional line art, and yet, like the P. Craig Russell book, and yet it has this sort of very elegant flourish to it, this very fine art stylistic approach to it. And so I'm always pursuing things like that, and so this is probably why I apply myself differently in sequential storytelling than just, I have a hard time just sticking to line art, then ink art, then whatever. So, just because. So this is the stack of stuff. On Monday, I assembled, sorry, I'm too close again. So on Monday, I assembled 14 pages where I took the jelly-plated pages, the Braille-off roller pages of paint, the slap and drag ink pages, some of the more interesting, like the tie-dye wash-looking pages. All these different surfaces, these working surfaces that I've been gathering up and trying different things with. And then I found a box that I went through which had oodles and oodles of illustrations that I never used, that I've never done anything with. So I took the two and I put them together, and I put together the first 14 pages. I've only used half of all the illustrations and visual imagery that I've been collating. And so in the last couple days, here are some of the approaches that I've made on the storytelling. Well, I'll just show you the finished pages. How's that? So here's today's, and before that is there's this one with the all of the ink illustrated studies of a scary face, and then here's this one about how the specific things of note to keep in mind in your career as a secret spy, and some silly fun to read. And this afternoon I'll be putting these on Patreon. I intended to do it yesterday, but I've got to do that today. So, and then of course there's this one, and they're very different approaches, and they're very different things that I'm trying to do. And in course of that, exploring different types of storytelling, we get different results, right? So, and then there's today's, which is what we started yesterday during the stream, and there's little additions in here. I think it was Stacy May that suggested put the word sweat in there. Okay, so it's up in there, things like that. So, Susanna Silva has joined us. Did you ever write or paint something murderish? Yes. I illustrated a book last year for a publisher out of Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada, and about a Sasquatch stalking after somebody through the forest. And the Sasquatch, the book that I was illustrating followed on the back of a previous series that this company had published, and at the end it was chasing this young couple at the end of this series. And so the start of my series was the unfortunate demise of the couple, a person witnessing it, the Sasquatch character noticing the person witnessing it, and then giving chase. And so despite the fact that there were calls in the script for graphic things on screen, like pulling an arm off and things like that. I didn't want to draw that. I didn't want to draw a guy's arm being pulled out of its socket. I just didn't. I thought it'd be more interesting to imply the attack of the monster with, its expression and its movement, rawr, right? And the spray of liquid elements and up in the air and with one single color. So rather than drawing what the actual impact is, because as much as I draw whatever I would draw, in my mind, whatever you come up with is probably scarier to you. And that's how I'm justifying not drawing an arm get pulled off. But, so that was a book I did last year. It was fun. I've shown it here on the stream. I think I've at least shown, I think, the cover. There's, I'll put it in camera. There's the cover for that book. And so that's one. And then I've done a series about a number of bad things are happening in the city. And so this ragtag group of noir era adventurers, like, and when I say I refer to that, I refer to like a lot of the pulp characters like Tarzan, the Shadow, Doc Savage, characters like that from the 1930s that would be printed on cheap pulpy paper and short novellas and to be consumed on the street. Like just something you put in your pocket and you read it when you're on your break and then put it back in your pocket. Well, so I did that, and I had a couple instances of scary moments in that, but one of the characters in that series could change into a bear, and that never went well for others. And another person had very animalistic hands, big, kind of like a wolf hands type thing, like claws, right? So there's different stories that I've done of that. I did a story called the Magic Act, and it's about, but it's not gore. It's just dark gothic horror of a magician who tries to capture and encapsulate all the magic, and in his house. And the problem is that he locks himself away and loses himself in the darkness. And so the son and his mother are, looked out for by somebody else of his, esoteric group. And as the boy raises up, everything about the boy's raising is in order to have him facilitate, once he's old enough, the undoing of his dad's magic spell so that they could release magic back into the world. And, it had a very dark, spooky ending. But that's more reminiscent of things like House on Haunted Hill and things like that than it is monsters, blood. Blah. So, and then this one is, let me see if I can find. So there's lots of character being chased through the forest, and here I'll zoom in on a moment here. There's the beast coming up behind him. Rawr, he says, which is Sasquatch for what's your favorite kind of baked bread? I don't know. But this is a fun book. I enjoyed doing this, and like here they are at the waterfall as the beast is trying to get him as he's floating down the river. Lots of stuff, lots and lots of things. So yeah, thank you for that question, Susanna. That's very nice of you. Chris says, there's a movie by Hayao Miyazaki, The Princess Mononoke, that is very visual in those aspects, blood and gore scene. It's quite graphic. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting things that Miyazaki does that unfortunately people think is aimed more towards young people, and yet some of the story concepts that he have are very very dark. I mean, Totoro is something else, right? Did you ever write or draw for a newspaper, like fun in 3 or 4 squares? Yes, I have. I've done that as well. And I've done quite a few things. So the new book that we're working on putting out is going to be, this year, is going to be my 31st book. And a number of those books are the anthologies that I've done, my own anthologies of short stories. It's called Short Story Release. I did 4 of those. And it's a bunch of short pieces, 1 page, 2 page, 4 page, 8 page, right? And in addition to the Elmwood 12 issues of that, or 11 issues of that, I'm sorry. And Space Opera Stories, 4. The Alphabet book, which is just single page pieces, is 3. Hyacinth Blues is 1. Apex is 2. Anyways, so anyhow, thank you for your questions, Ben. So this is the 4 images that we've got accomplished now. Here is the stuff that's assembled for this 3-page piece, and there's again some of the crime noir type characters that we'll be exploring in this one. But some of these images and the ideas, I think that there's great license and exploration that we can do with these. And I've got no problem with people throwing suggestions at me. So I will be doing pages on these throughout the week. Okay, and putting all of these out. So, but today, we're going to do a 1-page story of 13. I'm sorry, let me read the suggestion. Hello, Jim. Welcome aboard. The suggestion is from Marguerite, and it is 13 Teslas in a parking lot at night with red and blue lights. That is our suggestion. So we were doing some idea generation about this and talking about the different interpretations that a number of people have on the suggestion. And I'm always advocating, if there's an idea that I'm working from on any given day, okay, by all means, if you have a different interpretation that you want to try, or just a reiteration or a different approach to how I'm doing whatever I'm doing, please do. There's no such thing as this is my thing and you can't do it too. Like the suggestions that are on this page. There's such wonderful, diverse ideas here. And I strongly advocate that people give these storytelling ideas, in a limited context. In this case, I try to stick it to a page and explore a piece of story. It doesn't mean it's the whole beginning and epic end of something. It's just we're telling story here. And in the course of telling story, sometimes it's abstract ideas like Bird Takes Wing, the page that I showed earlier. Sometimes it's very involved ideas like the talk about passion that I did today. Whatever it is, if you go through my Instagram and my Facebook, underneath every page that I put up for people to see, I put the suggestion underneath. So feel free to take a look there and take a look at what the suggestion was for that. And if you get a different version of it, go for it. Really interesting thing we had last week was 3 words: mammoth, late, and instant coffee. I know it's technically 2 words. And so I did a page and I posted it. Chris Kalui, who's here in the chat, did a fantastic page and posted it. And very, very different. Very different. And both of them have a wonderful different interpretation of an idea. So I advocate people doing that. Chris says, I'm keeping it simple today. Last week, before the final exam, almost everything is graded up in the grade log. So now I'm needle felting a capybara with a backpack, as they do have. That's fun. Okay, so today's page. Well, I'm glad that you're able to have a day of taking it easy. Well, I think you still got a class today. But anyways, 13 Teslas in the parking lot. Sorry, can't read my own writing. 13 Teslas in the parking lot at night. Red and blue lights. That is today's suggestion. And I'll put it on a Post-it. And I'll stick it on the surface we're going to work on. Now, some of the different ideas and suggestions that people had about this, as we were having an open chat about it last week, and I said I will come to that idea, just not that day. People were talking about 13 Tesla cars lined up in a row waiting for the one charging station. That was when the police have to come and make sure everything's done orderly. Another one was 13 cars all trying to get charged and the fights breaking out and the police having to break it up. These are the basic ideas I'm remembering. The idea I had, bear with me, don't think I'm cuckoo for coconuts, but the idea I had was 13 Nikola Teslas, the inventor and scientist, 13 versions of him having a brawl in a parking lot, having a disagreement that gets out of hand in a parking lot, and red and blue flashing lights of the police having to come and break them up. So that's what we're going to try today. So these are some mixed surfaces that I've put together from putting tissue paper down and different pieces of printed paper and Post-its. This, if you can register that, hopefully you can, is the bag packaging of that your onions come in, stuck down to the surface. So it's got that wonderful lattice work going on. So this is Marguerite says it's a family reunion. A family reunion of diverse personalities. So these are all different surfaces that I put together and in order for me to work on. And so it's already, a mixed surface to have to do things on, just the same as the smaller 8.5 by 11 pages. So we're going to get crack-a-lackin' on this one. And I'm going to start with a ballpoint pen, I think, today, just because it wants to. If I can find where I put it. Do anybody else do this? Because you stick pens behind your ears all the time? Because I do. Pen. It worked. There he is. He answered me. Oh, these pens. Didn't he have wild hair too? Well, he had a few different looks. I'm pulling up. So this is how I work from Resource, and it's going to flash out for a second, so bear with it. So this is how I work from Resource, is that I'll type in some arbitrary thing towards what we're working on. If it's a librarian, I'll write bookshelf, and that sort of gives me, so I'll start drawing a bookshelf. Because the process of creating a page has to start from you taking a mark, making something or nothing, and starting to make marks on a surface, right? So I'll pull up all of these images like so, but I'll leave them at this scale. It's a lot of the same image, isn't it? Anyhow, I'll leave them at this scale, and that way it forces me not to just try to specifically draw that, with all the fine details. But that's not, we're trying to get down to the drawing first. So don't set yourself over the top. So I don't blow these up. I just leave it on this little stand I have beside the drawing board that I've bumped into the microphone, and I'm sorry for that. But so that's what we're going to work on. So I'm going to pop the camera in so it's a little bit closer, and I'm going to bring, so here is where I'm working. Now, I know that's there. I know that ornate paisley surface is there. It doesn't matter. The reason that it's there is that it has an underlying complexity that adds to the image. Also in here, there are pieces of additional white pieces of paper that are bonded into the surface. But if you're to run your finger over it, you'd feel your finger moving up and down because of the modulations in surface, because of the different stacks of paper. So let's get cracking. Let's start doing some Tesla. So I was going to write down a suggestion so that anybody that's here wants to try it. 13 Teslas in the parking lot at night. And then a little jump there to red and blue lights. I believe that was Marguerite that suggested that. If I'm wrong, please correct me, you guys. I wrote it down as Marguerite. So there is today's suggestion. If you want to write that down, if you want to take a snap at it, you know, if you happen to be particularly fond of your Tesla car and really want to have an excuse for incorporating that in a story, go for it. Now, there's a number of different ways that people can approach story. I'm going to start drawing. Chris is off the class. Take care, Chris. Good to see you. See you around on Friday. All right, excellent. So you don't just have to draw. You can do cutout images from magazines, of course, and collage pages. You can, you can take photographs of things, print those out, and incorporate those into your images. You can take photographs of things, put them in your computer, and cut out those photos, the car from your pictures, and move those around in an image. Why not? There's so many different ways we can have fun. One-page prompt for the future: an energy drink ad drawn in the style of Jack Kirby. Well, I'm not Jack Kirby. An energy drink ad. And we'll see about the Kirby part. He's ad. Whoops. He's got a very distinct style. I've seen a lot of people try to do their illustrations based on Kirby, and it's either you're just copying Kirby, or you're doing your own interpretation of Kirby. And there's so many interesting ways you can take a look at guys like Mitch Gaydos, G-A-D-Y-O-S, or G-A-Y-D-O-S, I'm sorry. His Mr. Miracle series he takes such departure with those characters, and yet every one of them looks exactly like those characters, but it's hard to replicate Kirby, because he's Kirby. We're referring to Jack Kirby, the guy that invented Fantastic Four, FF, the Hulk, Captain America, the Mighty Thor, X-Men. These are all Jack Kirby creations. So, all right. So Tesla, I gotta take my glasses off. They're just bugging my eyes today, and they're making my eyes agitated. But thank you for the suggestion, Jim. I put it down in the book, and we'll get crack-a-lacking at that when we get a chance. But I don't know if I can do a Kirby style. I really like Kirby style. I never understood Kirby's work as a kid, and it wasn't until I became older that I started looking at it and going, all right, I get it now. Okay, so let's have Nikola Tesla, narrate what's going on for us. So we'll do a quick portrait of Tesla. I put Tesla in a few things. I like Tesla. I think that the world the way it is today is entirely because of Tesla. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting messages. Anyways, we'll just get cracking. So we'll just start putting down Tesla's portrait. Now, when I do this modification on the surface, I tend to incorporate it into the illustration, and so you can see examples where, let's see. Okay, here's one. So in this page, there's some green lines moving through the face here, or there's lines that are cutting through the body over here, and I ignore those elements, right? I let those elements go. I put the character down, and even though this character is blending into the background, the shape and structure of the character is there, and I'm just drawing it over top. Now, originally the piece of image that I used to incorporate into this page was just this part of a face, and I drew the rest of it to be similar, to be the same character as this guy. So from a simple piece of a face, we just drew over top, and that includes the building peeking through behind and so on, because these modifications to surface, for me, they just make things a little more little more interesting, a little more keen, but I'm not rooted in having to utilize those. It's not how do I get rid of all this? I'm not trying to get rid of all this. I want some of that line content to be in there. I like the additional complication. I just do. I get when I have just a flat piece of paper, which I work on the regular as well, I tend to approach it in a very different way than something that's already modified. And I don't know if it makes any sense at all, but it makes sense in my head. Sometimes we have a hard time of getting started because we look at the paper and we don't want to wreck it, and we don't want to make a mistake. Oh, I've ruined it. Nope, no such animal. There is no such animal, because you can still undo things and fix things, and you can still come back and take things out, like say with if you've got a drawing and you've made a mistake over here, you can come in with a white paint, or I'll show you. You can come in. Do I have the Posca? There it is. Like I can come in here and push that little area back in the eye. Didn't really have to, but the point of that is that if you've got a little mistake in there, incorporate the mistake. Let it be part of whatever you're doing. So it lets you let go of the anxiety while you're working. It lets go of the preciousness of expectation. This, it's got to look perfect. Why? How about enjoy the process? There's an awful lot of overemphasis on something being a certain way and being, finished and highly developed. And, that only has value if you put stock in it. If you allow yourself to just follow the course your intuition is taking you on, or follow the course of however you're inspired to do so. This one might not be perfect. The next one might be better. So let that go. So I'm drawing the nose right over top of this tissue paper that's rooted into the paper surface. Sorry, I'll move that. Is that better? Can people see the suggestion if you want to try that? So I'll put that there. So I'm now in this section for the image, and this is where I can come in now with this white Posca and start pulling the shape of his nose up from that background. Emphasis on that point. Jim, is there a certain Jack Kirby that you like? Is there a certain, or what was the suggestion? It was energy drink ad drawn in the style of Kirby. Okay, I get it. Jack Kirby did an absolutely phenomenal short piece in a book called Streetwise, where he talked about what it was to grow up in Brooklyn in 1920s, 1930s. And they'd have block fights or building fights, and these kids are throwing glass bottles at each other from overhead. It sounds like absolute chaos. It's just a little mini war of kids in the ghetto. Many of those kids went off to fight in WW2. So now I can draw over top of this with the ballpoint pen, and so I think I'm already on the zoom, so I'll just hold this up a little bit. So we're starting to get his face, pulling his face. The very expressive eyes that he had is where I started from, and I've chosen him in I think this is him in his 40s. So the most predominant image that we all see of him, right? So the challenge of the soft approach of the pen is that we now have to figure out how to implement that light value in there, and so it's going to be a lot of putting down of some paint, and then I'll diffuse it with the tip of my finger so it softens the edge of it and, you know, allows us to blend into the area that is already darker in the beginning, right? So as we're putting these cross lines over and we're trying to pull light value back out of it, that's how we're going to have to try to do it. That's how we're going to do it, folks. So as usual, if anybody has one-page story suggestions they want to throw at me, please feel free to do so. Jim tries to stump me. Jim is the who suggested the Kirby thing a few moments ago. Jim is giving me the craziest suggestion to have to turn into a one-page story, and that was a horse playing guitar, riding a bicycle at the end of basically a black hole, at the edge of a black hole, and draw that as a page. It was good. That's a great suggestion. You know, that really is. I'm not saying that in any sarcasm at all. I truly am not. That's a great suggestion. Because talk about making your mind, making you have to think for a second, right? I mean, that's, how do I draw a horse playing guitar? How do I draw a horse riding a bicycle? How do I have the horse playing guitar while on the bicycle? You know, and then we get into the whole black hole thing. But it's actually a fourth dimensional parallax. But so, yeah, that was a good suggestion. That was a nice suggestion that makes you think a little. Nancy Moore's joined us. Hi, Nancy. Thank you for joining us. Welcome aboard. So drawing Nikola Tesla right off the hop as the narrator of the story that we're working up. Just sort of, once we identifiably have done an image of him so we understand him, the structure of who he is. So the remaining times that I'm going to draw different Nikola Teslas arguing with Nikola Teslas, 13 of them in a parking lot at night, as the image is farther back, so we're seeing the different guys in a you know, from a distance of somewhat, so that we can start to get, you know, more and more persons in the specific images. We can simplify if we can get the key ideas, the key directional marks of what makes up his face and his form. If we've established this image right off the hop, so you know what Tesla looks like from this image, and everything else is just a variation therein, then we don't have to draw these really complex Nancy, is it a horse with no name? No, it stayed out in the rain. We don't have to draw these complex images and try to get spot-on portraits throughout a whole page. That we're trying to save ourselves to some extent as storytellers to how involved the graphic imagery has to be. Now, there's, you know, if you want to draw all of those things, then feel free to do so. But time-wise, you know, it's a little consumptive, you know. If you've got that time for the consumption, then by all means. For those who joined late, check out an earlier part of the video where I talked about how Gary Hodges is going to be at a show in Arizona this weekend. If people want to go and meet him and talk to him about his series DVSM. Absolutely fantastic books. Look them up online. I really enjoy Gary's books. That's fun stuff that he's going to be doing an appearance this weekend. When you go up to his table, go, Gary! As loud as you can, and just, Gary! Gary Hodges! Do that when you walk up to his table. Or don't, you know. Gary's more mature than I am. Where in Arizona? Gary, if you are here, can you put the details up? Otherwise, look up DVSM on Facebook or Instagram, and all of the details, including his table number and things like that, are on his page. Gary's done a fantastic series, absolutely gorgeous books. is really good. They're really good. Sorry, I was just listening. Phoenix, Arizona, folks, the hottest city in North America. No, the hottest city in the United States of America. I'm sorry. I learned that. I read that in a thing yesterday. The hottest city in all of the United States of America. Phoenix. Oh, nice. Nancy's in southeast Tucson. Whereas Canadians read it Tucson. Sorry. What's the etymology of the word Tucson? Please tell me you live in Tombstone. Well, okay, now we're getting the geography of Arizona. This is good. I didn't know that's where Tucson was. I never even thought about that. Do any of you guys know Wyatt Earp? I'm barely let out of the house. Anyways. Okay, so here's our Nikola Tesla coming in now. And you're going to get the, he always used to have a shadow under his eyes. Real thinker, this kid. Real thinker. Real bright bulb. Huh? Nikola Tesla? Real bright one. Huh? His ideas were electrifying. Anybody? Oh, Nancy knows descendants of Wyatt Earp. Nice. That's very cool. Are they law people? Are they in the police officers or sheriffs? Anyways. Okay, so let's get that fantastico mustachio in here. That's the sort of thing that helps to confirm or helps to really pull together. I think you drawing the mustache really makes it Nikola Tesla. Croatian Nikola Tesla was born in what is now modern-day Croatia. Nikola Tesla did a thing that it's the only other instance that I've ever heard of other people at the time when I first heard it, and now I know lots of people that do this. I build things in my head, like when I'm doing drawings. The reason I don't do all of those lines for building up the structure of faces or cars or things like that, I just start drawing them, is that I tend to be doing that other part in my head. I just you know what I mean? As I'm drawing it, I know that the contour of this is this larger ovoid shape, and so I'm just starting at this side and moving my way across it. And Tesla would invent things, and he would design things, and he would troubleshoot the design elements in his head before he ever put anything to paper. And so he would, figure out the physical interaction of objects. And so when you're thinking, you're realizing that here he is designing electrical turbines and coiled copper wiring, and he's designing all that in his noggin. It's pretty impressive. Like I said, he's a real bright bulb, this kid. He's hiya Stacy, how you doing? He's a real bright bulb. He's better than Grease Lightning, he's so electrifying. You're welcome. How many people are thinking about Grease Lightning now? When I was a kid, I had no idea how dirty that song was. Are you having a good day today, Stacy? Everybody else that's joined us? It's an adult-only song. I had no idea. Also, look at me, I'm Sandra D. I had no idea what that song meant when I was a younger individual. But that's okay, because a lot of the songs I'm listening to in my teens, like All I Want to Do is Make Love to You by Heart, I had no idea what that song was about. You think it's just a romantic love song. It's a little more deeper than that. Today's it's an okay day so far, Stacy says. That's great. So one of the things I do, I'll show you this. I'm doing it. I keep doing it off camera. So when I'm drawing, I tend to hold my pen at an angle. Okay, roughly, I think it's probably about 40 degree angle. And so I tend to draw, and I tend to lightly apply the ink down on this angle, and rather than from above, where you're getting the full flow of ink through the ball that's in the tip of your pen. So what happens with that is, as you're putting ink out at the bottom, because it's equally dispensated out of the tip of a pen, most people, I think too much about pens, it dollops up at the top of the pen. It balls up a little bit of, collects a little bit of ink there. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over like this. So those little dollops, like so, are wiped off the pen on this other surface, so that as I'm drawing, it limits the amount of times that I get these smudges of ink in the drawing. So if you are drawing with pen, consider that. Just consider it. You don't have to. There's no such thing as rules. Not in this case, folks. We're just making the pictures. But if you find that you get these smudges of ink through your compositions, try that out. Try that out, because hey, all the cool kids are doing it. Or so I have read. Gary, will you have copies of your 3 books that you've put out of DVSM at your table in Phoenix, Arizona? And is it Saturday? I think it's on Saturday that this show is. I speak very highly of Gary's work, folks, because it really is quite good. Did you find... Oh, no, I'm sorry, I did not this morning, Stacy, because I had a kind of getting a whole bunch of things done morning for other things that I'm working on, some of the, the bill paying projects, right? So I didn't have an opportunity. I'm sorry. I will, though. I promise you. Tell you what, we'll do it. I'll put it up tomorrow, and if you stop in, then we'll walk through. Gary says, I always have a set of demo copies for people to paw through, and then they can order them online. You have the link for that there. Can they just like whoop, scan a thing, and hey, the books are on their way? You order them on the interwebs. Okay, so here's our Tesla coming together, and you got to get this boy's ears in here. He had some ears, let me tell you. Making sure I'm caught up on things. The motorcycle painting that I showed that I completed for one of my patrons there was well received. They really enjoyed it, so that was a nice thing. So I posted a reel. I don't really do reels. I'm going to do another one later on today of all of these pages that I've got put together for putting images on. And but I did a reel for it, and lots of people looking at the reel, which is funny because it's not really real. The reel. It's all in the magic of the interwebs. So again, we're thinking of the structure of the face and how all of the parts and the pieces are working together and everybody getting along in a fantastic assembly of form and stitching it all together, and it makes up the old human being that we're drawing here. So there's his hair. Oh, it's got some great hair. Look at that hair. Oh, here we go. Let's put it in there. Jet black hair, Nikola Tesla. I can tell you how much ink is in a ballpoint pen. I've done so many ballpoint pen drawings at this point. I can actually gauge out, if I'm working on a large drawing, how many pens I'm going to need. There's a drawing behind me in my studio space here. This is pencil crayon. This is a white pencil crayon drawing on a blue 4-foot by 6-foot board, and then there's black pencil crayon added to it. And so I know how far I can push a pencil crayon at this point. As you do larger drawings like that, you sort of get a handle on it, or a hand on it. Gary says, I always have set demo copies out for people to paw through, and I will have new copies bagged and boarded there. Or yes, there's a QR for some reason. You want to go to my Etsy shop. There you go. That's exciting stuff. If I lived in the area, I'd come and see Gary. So, when you were drawing this, what were you thinking at the time? Those are the questions that I go for. I like to get deep in the combo there. Can you draw an octopus? Don't do that to people in artist alleys. It's I've seen some people walk up and say some completely ridiculous things. I saw somebody at a convention once. Here's just an anecdote. I saw somebody at a convention once walk up to Neil Adams, who took the early Batman from the 1930s and 40s by Bill Finger, and then the different interpretations of him during the campy 60s. Batman tended to become more and more like that version of Batman, with a big broad chest and let me tell you something, Robin. And so when Neil Adams came on the book, he made it more gritty and far more realistically proportioned for a person with an Olympic athlete's physique, and he changed the logo. And so the way that he's interpreted today is a slightly different logo again, and a different, slightly altered costume again to be more darker and menacing in the book for whatever reason. And I saw somebody walk up to Neil Adams at a show and tell him he was drawing Batman wrong. And he handled it so gracefully. You're doing that wrong, You're supposed to draw like this guy. You got all kinds of different, the wonderful diversity of humanity. Marguerite says, I flew to Phoenix and I drove to Tucson for yoga training. That's super cool. That's super cool. My old studio in the house here is, Lori's yoga room now. And sometimes I go in there and help, and while she's doing the yoga, I'll lie on the floor and usually fall asleep. As soon as I lie down, immediately I'm ready to just knock right off there in her space. Which is not much better than our cat Corbin, who likes to go in there and help her by constantly getting underneath, her as she's trying to do her workout. So I don't know which one of us are worse. Probably me. Although he gets sent out, he gets kicked out of the room more often than I do. Well, he also goes in the room more often than I do. Okay, so here's our Tesla that's coming together now. And so I've left some space to the side of him here. And the reason that I've done so is to enable him to narrate, to have room for narrating our story. And so that sort of affords us some space for some word balloons and the like. So that's my thinking on that one. But there we go. I'm on there we go. On a slight angle. What style of yoga, Nancy is asking Marguerite. I like strawberry yogurt and yoga. Wah, wah. So I've been thinking, folks, and if anybody has some input on this, it might be fun. Are there ways that I can stir up the fun factor? The fun factor. That's all how you say it. Is there... Now, I'm working from everybody's suggestions, so it's not like I'm trying to make people feel discluded. Of course, I'm always trying to welcome you, even to create your own versions of things. I'm always open to that sort of stuff. But is there interesting ways that, I don't know, we could have a little more fun, like with maybe doing I could do some draws for things, or do illustrations for people, like, send them digital copies of illustrations, or I think that might be fun. It's an idea anyhow. So we'll see. We'll see what we come up with. And also, as usual, if anybody wants to talk about what they're working on, you're always welcome to do so. If anybody wants to, let anybody in on what their current projects are, or if you've got something you want people to go and take a look-see at. That's a look-see with a little bit of R in it. Feel free. Please let us know. Inquiring minds want to know. So there's our first panel. And so I've got a floating Nikola Tesla here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into this space around him. And we're also going to build out a little more in the structure here as well, so that we take back some of the tone in here. Cut this down. Trying to keep it consistent, though. We don't want it to look like he's had a bit of surface scarring or anything like that. So if people come up with, if people do have suggestions and do have ideas, and it's things that I can facilitate, I can do send images digitally and things like that, and I don't mind doing that. We can do some draws for stuff like that if people like, or just some fun, right? That's awesome, Chris. I started with Ashtanga. Ooh. Gesundheit. Sorry, I'm just a goofball today. All right, so let's. This is a water-based Artist Loft Light Gray, or Gris Clair. Anyways, so we'll come in. Now here's a fun thing. If things like water-based mark-making tools, if you've already got like matte medium or something like that down, you've got to give them a chance to dry, because they don't necessarily want to, they're looking for the porousness of the paper. They don't necessarily want to bond with that matte medium, I find. So it's very easy, like a second after you put something down, go and squish it right across your paper. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants the squishing. But it's a way to, incorporating some marker work like this is a nice subtle way to increase our contrast in our image and the like. Gary, do you want to come on? Your thing's on Saturday. If you've got time on Friday afternoon and you want to come on and talk about your book and little promo before the event, you're welcome to do so, sir. We can we have the technologies to set that up, you know. The technologies. Okay, so here's our Nikola Tesla. There's our master Tesla. Bikram, my husband, taught and was certified in it. Wow. Bikram for years. I did do answer. That's what the Arizona training was. Cool. The only formal training I've ever had in anything is Taekwondo Leap. So I'm just trying to, I'm putting additional coats down on the paint marker here, trying to build up those whites to stand out a little more. Be proud of who you are. Right. I tend to like to draw, because I get asked this. These are Papermate 1.0s. These are the ballpoint pens that I like to work with. They are the ballpoint pens that I find smudge the least if I utilize this method. So that tends to be what I tend to go for, what I tend to work with. Now, one of my ideas is, so I've drawn this, and I'll step out to the larger image. This is an 11 by 17 page, okay, that I've got here, and so you can see the space here around the illustration, and you can see that it is basically 1/9 of the overall size of the page. And but what this is allowing us to do is to introduce our story idea by having him narrate it. It allows us to get a firm visual grasp on the Nikola Tesla, what he looks like. It allows us to sort of just start with an open concept image. And one of the things that I can do is push inside from the outside edge of this. I can come in, I'll do this with a pencil, but I can come in, you know, 1/4 of an inch, and I can line out to the outside of the panel, and I can come in 1/4 of an inch here, just to make it, just to give it a little more interest in the placement of it. It's one thing to just put a box around something. It's another thing to let it pull out from the box. It does work a little bit as a draw and a separator. Another example of that is today's page, where the ballerinas are you know, they're in front of an existing panel, and so that gives a little more draw and pulls them away from the background images, even though there's translucence to them so that you can see some of the information from the background come through. This still pulls them forward, just brings them up a little bit. It's that the contrast, right? So I'm thinking about things like that when I'm putting a panel together, that I make sure to try to shake it up the way that I do one thing from the next. We're going to a black and white image today. Yesterday was a very colored image. You know, the yesterday had a sort of rough, almost watercolory application, and you know, with all the different washes of value to unify the sections of the piece, but at the same time, you know, I don't know, still tight enough, but as opposed to the difference of the very solid colors, the very solid values of the page before it, and how much more clear and impactful the line is there. You know, it's just trying different approaches, and you can incorporate different additions, little different elements. Even though I'm coming in now with this white and going around Nikola Tesla and cutting him away from the environment around him, you can still see this super fun pattern within his jacket. And I'll bring it up just a little bit, just to showcase that a little bit more. So can you see the pattern that still continues in the shoulder? Just to add a little bit of something, something, you know, a little bit of woo, a little bit of hey. Somebody needs a coffee. Making comments like hey hays and woos. You see Chris's stream today? Yeah, he's all hey hays and woos today. Oh boy. What is it, Wednesday? That makes sense. Okay, so there's our first image. Now, the suggestion is 13 Teslas in the parking lot at night. So we've got two choices. We can jump right into a point in the narrative where we've got all these Teslas accusing one another. You know, well, I invented the turbine engine. Yeah? Well, I invented the capacitor. Oh, yeah? Well, I invented tennis shoes. Some of those things he didn't invent. Here in Ontario, there's a small city called Niagara Falls on the edge of the United States. We've got our side of the falls, they got their side of the falls. But there's a museum there, and the electrical generators that were supplying hydroelectricity for southwestern Ontario were built there in Niagara. So, woo! So we can put all of our Teslas down. We can start jumping into that part of the narrative right away, or we can continue to contextualize the story place, the information. So rather than, you know, getting right into the guys fighting or getting right into, you know, the story action, we can have them narrate the parking lot that I normally go to charge my car, you know, and we can have them say something like, named after me, thank you very much. Well, it was full, and full of all these jerks, and then we can have different Teslas, Nikola Teslas, confronting each other. But before we do that, we can establish the place that it's all going to happen, the context for the narrative, and that is parking lot. So let's do a parking lot. So I managed to take off my Nikola Tesla faces. I don't know why I did that, but we don't necessarily need it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to push the shape language a little bit. And what I mean by that is this next panel that I put in, okay, is, well, I'll just use the pen. We have the technology for that. So, whoops, went over. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have this panel be very vertical, rather than you would expect a panel about a parking lot to be horizontal. That's the immediate expectation that we probably have, is that because you think about it, of all these parking spots side by side and spaced out over a large area. Well, let's try doing a vertical panel that squashes that image in. So just first, guys. And then so we're just putting our frame around this one. And the way that these pages are laid out, I made these pages myself. There's a 9-panel frame, and I'll show you. And if you're looking to try to tell storytelling and wanting to section off spaces of a page, this is divided. There's 2 lines at the side here, 2 lines in the center, and 2 lines at the side further down. The same on the opposite side. So by following across these 2 lines, this has been divided into a third of the overall page. There's another third. There's the top third. It does it the same way vertically as it does horizontally. So there's 2 lines in the center, and 2 lines equally spaced beside that, and the same at the bottom. So if we utilize these lines and find our way all the way down, that's a third of the vertical shape of the space. And the same, and the same. Which overall, if we just follow those lines and utilize those, we've got 9 equally sized panels. And so when you apply 9 equally sized panels to a story, think of it as a rhythm. Think of it as 9 equal. It's probably not 9. 9 equal beats in a story because of the same size. And no matter the complexity of visual image, it's probably in those panels. The reader is still looking at them like this. The only way that we can change that is with how we apply the text. If it was Tuesday in this panel, and in this next smaller panel, half of it is text. I couldn't believe it was Tuesday, because Tuesdays, I'm usually wearing my gray suit, but that day I wore my blue suit. And then there's a tiny picture at the bottom because we said too much. So the rhythm of this panel goes off, even if these panels were equal size, because this one says it was Tuesday, so we read that like this. And then I couldn't believe it was Tuesday, da-da-da-da-da-da, blah, 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 blah. So the rhythm of us staying with that panel is longer now. So that's, if you think of it as music, and you apply that to how you put your story down and how you put your text down, that's one way you can measure it out. Another way is smaller panels we tend to read quicker. Larger panels we tend to slow down on. That's just how it is. And you can fit more complexity, or you can have, there's more landscape for the eyes to move around and looking at the different elements in a composition that's slightly larger. So if you've got 15 panels of equal size on a page, they're going to have the same rhythm. But if you've got, let's say, 13 panels of equal size on the same page, but the last 2 panels are combined, so it's one larger panel, you've got 13 beats and then a longer beat for that last panel. So think about putting a page together in the panels and how they work together as music. Okay? I hope that helps. Nancy says, your side of the falls is prettier. Been to the museum. Nice. Niagara on the Lake. Nancy, if you get a chance on that side of the falls, please go to Niagara on the Lake. Lovely town. It's where the George Bernard Shaw Dramatic Festival takes place each year. Nancy says, great analogy. Oh, thank you. So we've got our introduction of our character, and he's going to introduce us to the story elements. So with that in mind, as I know that I've defined this panel next door is to be starting like so, then, ooh, we got a smudgy, messy thing underneath the underneath our tissue paper there. Oh, it ain't good. We'll deal with that. So this area can now be whited out, and then and on the opposite side of it as well, because we know we're putting little spaces between our panels. So this identifiably separates this beat dot, dot. When you look at the size of this, it's 1, 2, 3, right? So this will linger with twice as long as that. I hope that makes sense, folks. I try to use examples for people in order to say there's different ways that we can try to evaluate our processes here. And one of those ways is to think of things in different contexts that might be more understanding to us. And if you're a musician, you're going to understand thinking about the rhythm of story in accordance to the rhythm of music. See that? That's a dollop. That's a smudge right there. Thank goodness it's on that. Yeah, just making sure I'm in frame, folks. So just give me a second. I'm just building up a little grassy allocation within my... I want to apply some depth. So I've got a little grassy area in the foreground. So now when I put my lines down for, a little tree division between the parking lot, and I can apply some trees to it, and you'll see them a little more clearly in a few seconds here. But now this little curb that's here, and then after the curb, and according to the same perspective, I will line the parking spots like so. And as they get smaller, they recede into smaller spaces as they go farther back. That tells our reader that, hey, that's going into the distance. So, and then the other part that we can do that with is what I'm doing now. And let me see if I can draw in a little bit closer for people. I have the technology. Not very expensive equipment I have, but it does its job. It does its job. Okay, so I'll just move in. Oops, I'm on the wrong camera. Sorry. Pull back a tiny piece. So hopefully now you're going to more clearly see some of the differences. And what I'll do is I'll do this for you. I'm going to use a jelly pen, and because it'll make this little white pop, right? I'm going to adjust my page for a second, folks. Just give me uno momento, silver plate. Okay, so if I've got these trees that I described here, setting up some division in the background, if they're equally spaced, they're going to be more thin as they go along. So what we can do to utilize some of this fun pattern is that we can make this the top of our little tree line. And what we'll do is we'll cut out some of the shape of the trees from it. So rather than drawing in our trees, we're going to bring our trees out of the background. So I'll show you what I mean. What are you talking about, Chris? I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. So now, can you see that okay? Oh, I'll move it down. I'm so sorry. Get it in camera, goofy guy. So now as I'm coming in here and I'm putting in these trees, I'm utilizing positive and a negative application in order to find our trees with this silly pattern receding back inside of it. Now, in order to differentiate our parking lot area from the rest of this drawing, I'm going to use this marker that I used, this water-based marker that I used over here, and push that value a little bit. Let's see what I mean in just a sec. Just a sec, guys and dolls, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, cats and kittens. Can't think of anything more. Terrible. So now I'm just drawing in some of these trunk shapes, and I'm leaving some of this pattern information right here because it works as kind of interesting little patterns for the grass that's on this divider there. And so we'll come in now and we'll put in the bottom of this tree line. And it makes all of the children happy. So there we go. So there's our parking lot. Trees moving backwards away from us. And it's those little different kind of ways that we apply lines and shapes, stuff together. So I'm going to come in here and be sneaky and silly for a second, and I'm going to put in marks emulating some of the pre-existing shapes from the pattern that's through here with the ballpoint pen. Why? It's because and then we can do the same kind of thing here in the foreground. And then we're going to go over top of this with our unifying marker like we did here, right? Even though you can see the pattern through it. So now, as I'm going through here, and just because I think it's fun and interesting, I'm using the pen and putting similar shapes as we have right here with the tissue paper, the pattern tissue paper, and I'm putting those down below here for no real reason other than it just makes it a little more interesting. Just incongruent little random shapes that are going to get covered up in a second. Just because we can. So it just extends this over, right? Just making it more complicated for myself. So we've got this grassy area here, and we've got, so we'll put some texture in there. So now I can come in with, like this Posca, and tamp that down a little bit so it diffuses this pattern here. But it's still going to be sort of standing out in the parking lot. Woohoo! Of course, I'm going to need to let this set, and then the last thing that I'll do is I'll come back in with that Jelly Roll pen, and I will put the lines in for the vehicles. So there we go. So there's our parking lot now put down in there. So as he's talking about, here's our guy reflecting on the incident. There's the place where the incident happens. And so that's, that's basically starting to pull together the page. However people want to interpret the idea, it's not going to be the same as the person beside them. It's just not. And the suggestion for today's page is 13 Teslas in the parking lot at night red and blue lights. You know, and of course there's all kinds of suggestions with red and blue lights. So that's the thing. I think what I'm also going to do is that I'm going to take this gray water-based Artist Loft marker, brush marker, and I'm going to put the sky in. And then what I can do is take some white ink and a toothbrush, and I can just do a little friscolation, a little flicking. As I pull the teeth back, it'll fleck little bits of white there, and we got some stars in the sky. So, you know, there's different things that we can do, different approaches that we can take in order to build up a little bit of complexity in our images. And, you know, it's just playing. It's just putting things together, smacking things together and see what sticks, you know. And in the course of doing so, you know, we have fun and we make the stories that we ourselves may well be interested in reading, and hopefully someone else is as well. Somebody out there is looking forward to what you're doing. They may not be somebody right beside you. They might not be where you expected. I don't know. But there's validity to the expression that everybody has. So by all means, give yourself the opportunity and try. Allow yourself to explore ideas in different ways, and to allow yourself to make mistakes. You know, throw messy mark-making things at paper and see what happens. And or in whatever application you want to do for self-expression. But there's validity to everything that everybody, you know, to everybody trying to express themselves. This is just another form of communication, as I usually say. All right, so this has been a good start. This is some good fun. I will get back to this later. So this is the size of the page. It's 11 by 17. There's another piece of this complicated element. There's some raised surfaces of white paper throughout the surface here. They're going to give modulations to lines, and it could make some interesting breaks as I'm making some crosshash marks, you know. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. Yeah, I started a little earlier today, you know. Just was ready to go, and I know I've got a kind of a hectic day, so I thought I'd just jump right in there while I was ready to go. So for those of you that joined in late and feel that you missed some of the books that I showed in the earlier part of the stream, and we talked about a whole bunch of other really creative approaches to sequential storytelling outside of the expected norms, and different materials that people utilize, and lots of mixed media application. We'll be back tomorrow, and I've got some fun ideas planned, but I've opened up a suggestion. If people think that there might be some other things that we can do during the stream, like if people, you know, I don't mind doing a draw for each week for anybody that might want some kind of illustration, or I don't know what yet. So if people have ideas, please feel free to put them in the comments below this video, because there's no point in putting in a chat. Chat's about dead. But put them in the comments below this video, or feel free to put them in the comments on my Instagram, Facebook, or Patreon pages in the comments there. And as well, you can use those same spaces for suggesting ideas or word prompts or whatever you like to try to challenge me to other stories to try to convey. And awesome fun. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for everybody coming by and spending this time together. And I hope that you're out there doing your own creative expression. I look forward to seeing it. And if you get a chance, I think Yolanda's stream is still going now. Devon Rex for Art, where she's doing some jelly plating with stencils that she herself has made and designed. Anyways. Okay, so go take a look there. You'll find some interesting insights and different ways to smush mark making on surfaces for you to do something with. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye for now. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nancy.